I never thought I'd be sitting in a parked car outside my mother-in-law, Patricia's massive colonial house, watching my own husband celebrate his mother's 60th birthday through the bay windows. The late June heat made the car feel like an oven, even with all the windows down. My carefully styled hair was plastered to my neck, and my expensive new dress, bought specifically for this occasion, was wrinkled from sitting for hours. "Just a little longer, honey," James had promised 90 minutes ago, poking his head through the car window. "Mom's just worried about you spreading that cold to Aunt Margaret. You know how fragile she is." He kissed my forehead and hurried back inside, leaving me with nothing but my phone and the distant sound of laughter and clinking glasses. The thing is, I didn't have a cold. I hadn't been sick in months. But Patricia had taken one look at me when we arrived, grabbed James's arm, and loudly announced to everyone that I was terribly ill and should wait in the car until I felt better. Before I could protest, she'd whisked James away, leaving me standing in the driveway like a delivery driver who'd outstayed their welcome. That's when I started recording. 5 years of marriage to James had taught me that Patricia never did anything without calculation, and I was done being her perfect scapegoat. Through the window, I could see her holding court in her designer dress, pearls gleaming as she laughed with her country club friends. My mother-in-law was the type of woman who color coordinated her gardening outfits and had her housekeeper iron her dish towels. Everything in her world had to be perfect, controlled, and most importantly, done her way. And I, with my public school education and middle-class background, had never fit into her carefully curated world. It didn't matter that I had a successful career as an architect or that I made James happier than he'd ever been. To Patricia, I would always be the woman who stole her precious son from the debutante she handpicked for him. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister asking how the party was going. I started typing, still in the car, when Patricia's voice, crystal clear through my recording, caught my attention. James was supposed to marry Caroline Mitchell. Her family has connections, breeding. But he came home with this architect who probably just wanted our family's money. Do you know she suggested having food trucks at their wedding? Food trucks. I nearly died of shame. I turned up the volume, my hands shaking slightly as I continued to listen. For the past 3 hours, my phone had been capturing every conversation, every snide comment, every cruel remark Patricia made when she thought I couldn't hear. And now she's trying to convince James to move across the country for her career. Can you imagine? Abandoning his family business for her selfish dreams? I didn't raise my son to be controlled by some social climbing gold digger. The job offer had come last week, a prestigious position leading a major sustainable development project in Seattle. James had been excited for me, proud even. We'd stayed up late discussing the possibilities, the adventures we could have. But when he mentioned it to his mother, a sharp tap on my window made me jump. James stood there, looking concerned. "Mom's about to cut the cake. Are you feeling well enough to come in?" I looked at my phone, at the 3 hours and 17 minutes of recorded proof of Patricia's true nature, and made a decision. Actually, yes, I'm feeling much better. I grabbed my purse, checking that my phone was still recording. I think it's time everyone heard exactly how I'm feeling. James smiled, relief evident on his face. He'd never been able to see through his mother's manipulations, always believing the best of her. That was about to change. As we walked toward the house, I could hear Patricia's voice floating through the open French doors. Of course, Sarah couldn't handle a simple birthday party. These modern women are so delicate, nothing like our generation. I squeezed James's hand, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The cool air conditioning hit me like a wall after hours in the hot car. Every head turned as we entered, Patricia's face freezing mid-sentence. "Sarah." Her voice dripped with fake concern. "Are you sure you should be inside? We wouldn't want anyone catching." "I think it's time for a different kind of entertainment," I interrupted, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "I've been recording quite an interesting show from the car." Patricia's perfectly penciled eyebrows drew together in confusion. Then, as understanding dawned, the color drained from her face. "You see," I continued loud enough for everyone to hear, "while I was quarantined in the car, totally healthy, by the way, my phone caught some fascinating conversations. Would anyone like to hear Patricia's true thoughts about her daughter-in-law? Or maybe her opinions about the Mitchell family's recent bankruptcy? Oh, and Aunt Margaret, you might be particularly interested in what she said about your new facelift. The crystal champagne glass in Patricia's hand trembled slightly. For the first time in 5 years, I saw real fear in her eyes. Sarah, James whispered beside me, what are you talking about? I met Patricia's gaze across the room, my finger hovering over the play button. Should I start from the beginning, Mother dearest? Or would you prefer I skip to the part where you called me a social climbing gold digger? The room had gone so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the punch bowl. 60 pairs of eyes darted between Patricia and me, waiting to see what would happen next. The perfect birthday party was about to become something very different indeed. The silence in the room was deafening as I connected my phone to the Bluetooth speaker system Patricia had bragged about installing throughout the house. James stood frozen beside me, his expression a mix of confusion and growing concern. Sarah, dear, Patricia's voice had taken on that sickly sweet tone she used when trying to maintain control. You're clearly not feeling well. Perhaps the heat has affected your... I pressed play. That woman is destroying everything I built. Patricia's recorded voice filled the room. 30 years I've spent cultivating our family's social position, and she waltzes in with her public school education and her modern ideas about marriage. The glass in Patricia's hand slipped, shattering on the imported marble floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. All eyes were fixed on the speakers as 3 hours of Patricia's true nature poured out. And now she's not even trying to give me grandchildren, probably too focused on her precious career. When I was her age, I knew my duties as a wife. I watched James's face as his mother's words washed over him. The color had drained from his cheeks, and his hand had dropped from my waist. He took a step toward his mother, then stopped, as if unsure which way to turn. Mom, his voice cracked slightly. Is that really you saying these things? Patricia's carefully constructed facade began to crack. James, darling, you have to understand. Another snippet played. James was always such a sensitive boy. Too sensitive, really. If his father were still alive, he'd never have allowed this marriage. But I'm working on it. Caroline's still single, and once I get rid of this architect... The gasp that went through the room was audible. Caroline Mitchell herself, standing near the punch bowl, turned a deep shade of red and hurried toward the door, her mother following close behind. Turn that off. Patricia's voice had lost its cultivated smoothness, becoming shrill. This is my birthday party, and I will not have it ruined by... By the truth? I asked quietly, by everyone finally seeing who you really are. More recordings played. Patricia mocking Aunt Margaret's weight, criticizing Uncle George's failing business, revealing secrets she'd sworn to keep about her closest friends. With each revelation, another guest either fled the room or stood in shocked silence. I trusted you, came Mrs. Henderson's trembling voice from the corner. I told you about Thomas's gambling and confidence, and I trusted you to be a proper wife to my son. Patricia shot back, her composure finally shattering completely. Instead, you're trying to drag him across the country, away from his family, away from everything we built. Everything you built, Mom. James's voice cut through the chaos. Did you ever ask what I wanted to build? Patricia turned to him, reaching out. Darling, everything I've done has been for you. This woman doesn't understand our world, our traditions. Your traditions, James interrupted. His voice was quiet but firm. Your world. And do you know what I remember most about that world, Mom? Being afraid to bring home anything less than perfect grades. Having to break up with my first girlfriend because her father was new money. Never being allowed to pursue photography because it wasn't a proper career for a Harrison. I watched as years of unspoken resentment finally surfaced in my husband's eyes. And now I find out you've been trying to sabotage my marriage? That you've been plotting to get rid of the one person who's ever encouraged me to be myself. James. Sarah got that job offer because she's brilliant at what she does. He continued, his voice growing stronger. And when she told me about it, do you know what I felt? Relief. Relief at the chance to start fresh, away from all this. He gestured around the room at the remnants of the perfect party. Patricia swayed slightly, reaching for a chair. You can't mean that. You have responsibilities here, the family business. The family business that's been losing money for 3 years because you won't let us modernize. James laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sarah's been trying to help, offering to redesign our outdated properties, but you blocked her at every turn. More guests were quietly slipping out now, leaving through side doors and the kitchen entrance. Patricia's perfect birthday party had become a perfect disaster. I gave up my dreams for this family. Patricia's voice had turned hard, bitter. I played the perfect wife, the perfect mother, kept up all the right appearances, and made everyone around you miserable in the process. I finished for her, including your son. James took my hand, squeezing it tightly. We're taking the job in Seattle, Mom. Both of us. I'm going to start a photography studio while Sarah leads her project. We're going to build our own life, our own way. Patricia sank into her chair, her face ashen. The remaining guests, mostly family who couldn't easily escape, stood in awkward clusters around the room. If you do this, Patricia's voice was barely above a whisper. If you choose her over your family. You'll what? James asked. Cut me off? Go ahead. Sarah's project pays more than the family business ever did. Disinherit me? Fine. We don't want your money. Tell all your society friends how your son abandoned you. Based on what everyone heard today, I don't think you have many friends left to tell. The beautiful birthday cake, a 3-tiered masterpiece from the most expensive bakery in town, sat untouched on its crystal stand. 60 unlit candles stood like silent witnesses to the destruction of Patricia's carefully constructed world. I stopped the recording and unplugged my phone. The damage was done. Looking around the room at the shocked faces and whispered conversations, I knew there would be no coming back from this for Patricia. Her reign as the family's supreme matriarch was over. Happy birthday, Mother, James said quietly. Consider this our gift to you, the truth. As we turned to leave, I heard Patricia's voice, small and broken, behind us. What will people say? I looked back one last time at the woman who had tried so hard to break me. They'll say exactly what you've taught them to say about others all these years. And for once, it will be the truth. Hand in hand, James and I walked out of the house, leaving behind the remains of Patricia's perfect party and stepping into the warm summer evening. Our future lay ahead of us, free from the shadows of false perfection and social expectations. But this wasn't quite the end. Patricia Harrison had never been one to accept defeat gracefully, and I had a feeling the recording I'd played today was just the opening shot in what would become a much larger war. The aftermath of Patricia's birthday party unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck over the next 2 weeks. The social circles she dominated for decades crumbled around her, one carefully cultivated relationship at a time. First came the resignation letters from her various charity boards. Then the country club mysteriously lost her standing lunch reservation. Her weekly bridge group disbanded for personal reasons. Even her housekeeper of 15 years quit, citing a sudden need to spend more time with family. But Patricia wasn't going down without a fight. She's frozen all the family business accounts, James told me one morning, running his hands through his hair in frustration. And she's trying to claim I'm mentally unstable, influenced by you to abandon my responsibilities. I was in our home office, packing up files for the Seattle move when the certified letter arrived. Patricia was suing me for defamation and illegal recording. The amount she was demanding would have bankrupted us if we didn't have something she didn't know about. Should we show her? I asked James, holding up the USB drive that contained the real bombshell. He nodded grimly. It's time. The meeting was set for Patricia's attorney's office. She swept in wearing her armor of channel and pearls. But the cracks in her facade were visible, dark circles poorly concealed under her makeup, a slight tremor in her manicured hands. Before you proceed with this lawsuit, I said calmly, sliding the USB drive across the polished conference table, you might want to watch this. The video played on the attorney's laptop. It showed Patricia in her home office late at night, methodically altering business documents, moving money between accounts, backdating signatures. The timestamp showed dates going back 3 years. Our IT guy installed security cameras when he upgraded your system last year, James explained quietly. Every computer in the office records its screen activity. Every transaction is logged. Patricia's face went from pale to ashen. You wouldn't dare use this. I'm your mother. And I'm your son, but that didn't stop you from trying to destroy my marriage and steal my wife's inheritance. That revelation hit her like a physical blow. What inheritance? I smiled for the first time since entering the room. My grandmother's estate. The one you've been trying to track down through your private investigator. Turns out those food truck ideas for the wedding came from my years running a successful restaurant chain on the West Coast. I sold it last year for enough to fund our Seattle project twice over. We don't need your money, Mom, James said softly. We never did. We just wanted your acceptance. Patricia's attorney cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mrs. Harrison, given this new evidence, I strongly advise withdrawing the lawsuit. The mighty Patricia Harrison slumped in her chair, her perfect posture finally breaking. What do you want from me? Sign the business over to James, I said. Let us modernize it our way. Stop interfering in our lives. And most importantly, if you ever want to be part of your future grandchildren's lives, get counseling. 2 hours later, we walked out of the attorney's office with signed papers and a legally binding agreement. Patricia had lost her final battle for control. As we drove home, James reached over and squeezed my hand. You know what this means? I nodded. We're free. 3 months later, we stood in our new Seattle home, watching the sunset over Puget Sound. The Harrison family business was thriving under its new modern direction, managed remotely with occasional visits east. My sustainable development project was ahead of schedule, and James's photography studio was booked solid for months. Letter from Mom, James said, holding up an envelope. Inside was a single photo. Patricia sitting in a therapist's office, actually smiling. On the back, she'd written, working on it. Maybe visit for Christmas. I looked at James and saw hope in his eyes. Baby steps, I said, hugging him. Baby steps, he agreed, placing a hand on my slightly rounded belly. And speaking of babies, we had defeated the dragon, but more importantly, we'd shown her a path to redemption. Whether she took it was up to her, but we would face whatever came next together, on our own terms. Sometimes the happiest endings don't come from destroying your enemies, but from giving them a chance to change, even if that enemy is your mother-in-law who once made you sit in a car during her birthday party. I never meant to find the birth certificate. I was just doing what any good daughter-in-law would do, helping clear out Grandma Rose's house after her passing 3 weeks ago. The attic was the last frontier, a dusty time capsule of family history that needed sorting before the estate sale. That's when I found the metal box, tucked behind a stack of old Life magazines from the 1960s. It was locked, but the key was taped to the bottom. Classic Grandma Rose, always practical even in her secrets. Inside, beneath a stack of love letters and faded photographs, was a birth certificate from 1985. The name caught my eye immediately, Rebecca Ann Mitchell, but that wasn't what made my hands shake. It was the physical description that followed: red hair, green eyes, distinctive birthmark on the right shoulder, exactly like my sister-in-law Claire. Except Claire was supposed to be Claire Elizabeth Watson, born in 1988. Find anything interesting up there? Claire's voice floated up from the bottom of the attic stairs, making me jump. The birth certificate slipped from my trembling fingers. Just some old magazines, I called back, quickly stuffing the document into my jacket pocket. Nothing important. But it was important. Over the past 3 years, since Claire had appeared in our lives claiming to be my husband Mark's long-lost sister, something had felt off. The way she avoided talking about her childhood, her convenient explanation about adoption records being sealed, how she'd shown up right after Grandma Rose had won that massive lottery. Sarah? Claire was climbing the stairs now. Mark's wondering if you're ready to go. We need to meet the estate lawyer at 3. I gathered some magazines as cover, trying to keep my voice steady. Coming. Just got caught up in these old articles. Claire reached the top of the stairs, her red hair catching the dusty sunlight streaming through the attic window. She was wearing an expensive new dress, another purchase from her mysterious consulting job that never seemed to require actual work. You know, she said, picking up a photograph from the floor, I always wondered why Grandma Rose spent so much time up here in her final months. Said she was organizing family history. Claire's green eyes met mine. Find anything historical. Something in her tone made the hair on my neck stand up. Nothing special, I lied, feeling the birth certificate burn in my pocket. Ready to go. The drive to the lawyer's office was tense. Claire insisted on taking her new Mercedes, leaving my car at the house. As she drove, I noticed her glancing at me in the rearview mirror more than usual. You're quiet today, she observed, her manicured fingers tapping the steering wheel. Everything okay? I nodded, my hand instinctively touching my pocket. Just thinking about Grandma Rose. It's strange how suddenly she declined after Christmas. Claire's fingers tightened on the wheel. The doctors said it was natural causes. Heart failure. Common at her age. True, but she was so healthy at Christmas dinner. Remember how she danced with Mark? And then 3 days later. Sometimes death comes quickly, Claire cut in. Besides, she left everything in order. Even updated her will last month. Yes, I thought. Updated it to include you, her newfound granddaughter, as a major beneficiary just weeks before her death. We pulled into the lawyer's parking lot early. As Claire turned off the engine, I decided to take a risk. It's funny, I said casually. I was just reading about that family in Phoenix. The woman who pretended to be a long-lost relative to get into a wealthy family's will. They caught her because of an old birth certificate. Claire went very still. What are you implying? Nothing. Just an interesting story. The woman's real name was Rebecca Mitchell. Reminded me of someone. The change in Claire's face was instant. The polished mask slipped, revealing something hard and cold beneath. In one fluid motion, she hit the power locks and grabbed my wrist. "Where is it?" she hissed. "What did you find in that attic?" I tried to pull away, reaching for the door handle with my free hand. "Let go of me." "The birth certificate," she snarled. "Give it to me now." I managed to get the door open, but as I tried to step out, Claire yanked me back and slammed the heavy car door on my hand. The pain was explosive, but through my scream, I heard something else. The sound of papers falling from my pocket onto the car floor. Claire snatched the birth certificate, her face twisted with rage. "You stupid, nosy bitch. You had to keep digging, didn't you? Couldn't just accept things as they were." Through tears of pain, I saw something else fall from my pocket, a small envelope I hadn't noticed before, one that must have been stuck to the birth certificate. Claire saw it too, her face going pale as she recognized Grandma Rose's handwriting on the front. "To be opened in the event of my death by suspicious circumstances," I read aloud, cradling my injured hand. Claire's expression shifted from rage to calculation. "Get out of the car," she ordered, reaching into her designer purse. Now, as I stumbled onto the pavement, I saw what she was pulling out. A small glass vial identical to the one found on Grandma Rose's nightstand the night she died. "You know," Claire said, her voice eerily calm, "heart failure runs in families, and stress can trigger it at any age." That's when I noticed Mark's car pulling into the parking lot, and I realized this was just the beginning of a family revelation that would shake us all to the core. Mark's arrival should have been a relief, but the look in Claire's eyes told me otherwise. She quickly slipped the vial back into her purse and plastered on a smile so convincing it chilled me to the bone. "Oh my God, Sarah," she called out, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I'm so sorry about the door. It was an accident. I didn't realize your hand was there." Mark rushed over, his doctor's instincts kicking in as he examined my swelling fingers. "This needs an X-ray," he said, shooting his sister a questioning look. "How did this happen?" Before I could speak, Claire was already spinning her story. She was getting out while I was closing the door. Terrible timing. "I feel awful." She held up her phone. "I'll reschedule with the lawyer." "No," I said too quickly, making both of them stare at me. "I mean, Mark, there's something you need to see first." Claire's hand tightened around her purse. "Sarah's just upset about the injury. We should really get her to the hospital." But I was already pulling the envelope from my pocket with my good hand. "Your grandmother left this. It's important." "That's private family business," Claire snapped, reaching for the envelope. But Mark was faster. "To be opened in the event of my death by suspicious circumstances," he read slowly, his face darkening. "What is this?" "Ask your sister," I said, watching Claire's composed facade crack slightly. "Ask her about Rebecca Mitchell." "Who?" Mark looked between us, confusion evident on his face. Claire laughed, but it was brittle. "She's delirious from the pain. We should really show him the birth certificate." I interrupted. "The one you just took from me." Mark turned to Claire, his hand extended. After a long moment, she pulled out the wrinkled document and handed it over. I watched my husband's face as he read, saw the moment understanding begin to dawn. "This says, but this can't be." "It's fake," Claire said quickly. "Obviously planted to cause trouble. Sarah's always been jealous of our relationship." "The birthmark matches," I pointed out. "Same red hair, green eyes. Same age as Rebecca Mitchell, who disappeared from Phoenix 3 years ago, right before Claire showed up here." Mark's doctor hands were steady as he held the birth certificate, but his voice shook. Claire? She must have seen something change in his expression because her strategy suddenly shifted. Okay, fine. Yes, I used a different name. I had to, my past was complicated. But I'm still your sister. Are you? I asked quietly. Or did you research Mark's family, learn about his adopted sister who died as a baby, and create the perfect story? That's ridiculous. But her eyes kept darting to her purse, to the vial hidden inside. Is it? I turned to Mark. Did you know your grandmother changed her will 3 days before she died? Added Claire as a major beneficiary. Because she loved me. Claire's composure was cracking. I was there for her in the end, unlike you two. You were there, all right, I said, my injured hand throbbing with renewed purpose. Just like you were there when she had her first heart episode right after she told you she wanted to hire a private investigator to find documentation of your adoption. Mark went very still. What? Check her purse, I said softly. Look for a vial like the one found by Grandma Rose's bed. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Claire made a break for her car, but Mark caught her arm, sending her designer purse crashing to the pavement. Contents spilled everywhere. Makeup, keys, and a small glass vial that rolled to a stop at my feet. It's not what you think, Claire said, but her voice had changed, the refined accent slipping into something harder, more desperate. I think, Mark said, picking up the vial, that this looks exactly like the heart medication Mom used to take, the one that's fatal in high doses. You can't prove anything, Claire spat, and in that moment she was truly Rebecca Mitchell, cold, calculating, and cornered. Actually, said a new voice, we can. We all turned to see Detective Lisa Morrison stepping out of an unmarked car, followed by 2 uniformed officers. I sagged with relief. My text for help hadn't gone unnoticed. Rebecca Mitchell, the detective said, we've been looking for you. Phoenix PD sends their regards. As the officers moved to handcuff her, Claire, Rebecca, made one last desperate play. Mark, please. I may not be your biological sister, but these past 3 years, didn't they mean anything? My husband's face was a mask of pain and fury. Did Grandma Rose mean anything to you? When you gave her that fatal dose? You don't understand, she hissed, finally dropping all pretense. That old woman was going to ruin everything. She found letters from my last Mark in Phoenix, started asking questions. I couldn't let her destroy what I built here. And what was that exactly? Detective Morrison asked, holding up a tablet. Because according to our records, you've pulled the same con in 3 other states, always targeting wealthy families with missing or deceased relatives, always ending in mysterious deaths. I watched the last traces of Claire vanish, replaced by the cold eyes of a predator who'd finally been caught. But as the officers led her away, she turned back one last time. Check the will, she called out, smiling despite the handcuffs. I still get everything. Dead women's wishes have to be honored after all. Mark stepped forward, holding up Grandma Rose's envelope. Actually, let's see what other wishes she left behind. Inside was a single page, dated the day before her death. My dearest Mark and Sarah, if you're reading this, my suspicions about Claire were correct. I've left proof of her true identity with my lawyer, along with a new will. Don't let my death be in vain. And Sarah, thank you for seeing what I saw. You were always the daughter I needed. Love, Grandma Rose. As police cars pulled away with our fake sister-in-law, I looked down at my throbbing hand, a small price to pay for uncovering the truth. Mark pulled me close, his doctor's fingers gently examining the injury. I'm sorry, he whispered, for not believing your instincts about her sooner. You wanted a sister, I said softly. She knew exactly how to play that desire. The detective approached us, her notebook open. We'll need formal statements and there'll be an autopsy order for your grandmother's body. But with the evidence we've collected in her confession, well, let's just say Rebecca Mitchell won't be playing family with anyone else for a very long time. 6 months later, we stood in Grandma Rose's garden, now blooming with the spring flowers she planted in her final season. The case against Rebecca Mitchell had revealed a trail of devastated families across 4 states, each one drawn in by her elaborate impersonations of long-lost relatives. The DA called this morning, Mark said, kneeling to pull a weed from around Grandma's favorite rosebush. Rebecca took the plea deal, 25 to life, no possibility of parole for 15 years. My hand, finally healed but still bearing a slight scar, touched the smooth stone of the new memorial bench we'd installed. Grandma Rose would be pleased. She left us everything we needed to catch her killer. The investigation had uncovered the full scope of Rebecca's plan. She'd meticulously researched Mark's family, discovering records of his biological sister who died in infancy. Using that information, she'd crafted an identity that would appeal to both Mark's desire for family connection and Grandma Rose's generous heart. "Found something else in the attic yesterday," Mark said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "Photos of my real sister, the one who died." Inside were faded hospital pictures of a tiny baby, gone too soon to even leave the NICU. Claire Elizabeth Watson, the real one, who would never grow up to have red hair or green eyes or a carefully crafted story. "She would have been loved," I said softly, watching my husband trace the image with gentle fingers. "Like you were loved by Grandma Rose," he replied. "She saw through Rebecca's act from the beginning, didn't she?" I nodded, remembering the subtle clues our sharp-minded grandmother had left. The strategically placed birth certificate, the hidden envelope, the careful documentation of her suspicions. The hardest part was watching Rebecca play the devoted granddaughter while knowing she was poisoning Grandma Rose, I admitted. But Grandma knew the truth would come out. She trusted us to find it. The garden felt peaceful now, cleansed of the darkness that had briefly invaded our family. The lawyer had found Grandma Rose's real final will, along with a detailed letter explaining her suspicions about Claire and her fears about what might happen. "You know what else the DA said?" Mark asked, standing to brush dirt from his knees. Rebecca had a whole storage unit full of family research, files on wealthy families with missing relatives, adoption records, obituaries. She was planning her next con before she even finished this one. But she didn't count on Grandma Rose, I smiled, touching the roses that bloomed despite everything. Or her stubbornness about keeping family records in that attic. Mark took my scared hand, kissing the still tender spots where the car door had crushed it. Or her brilliant granddaughter-in-law who wasn't afraid to dig for the truth. As we walked back to the house, I thought about family, not the fake version Rebecca had tried to sell us, but the real, messy, wonderful truth of it. The love that made Grandma Rose leave us clues even as she faced her killer. The strength that helped us uncover the truth. The justice that finally gave us peace. "What should we do with the real Claire's photos?" Mark asked as we reached the porch. I squeezed his hand. "Put them in a family album. She may not have lived long, but she was family. The real kind, the kind Rebecca could never understand." Because that was Grandma Rose's final lesson to us. Real family isn't about perfect stories or convenient appearances. It's about love that persists even after death, truth that emerges even from lies, and bonds that grow stronger through every trial. And sometimes it takes a slammed car door and a hidden birth certificate to remind us what family really means. I should have known something was wrong when Linda insisted on hosting Thanksgiving this year. In 15 years of marriage to my son Michael, she had never shown interest in family traditions, let alone volunteered to cook a turkey. "It's time for a change," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Besides, you deserve a break, Margaret." The first red flag appeared when I arrived early to help with preparations, only to find the china cabinet empty. My mother's Wedgwood collection, passed down through 3 generations, was conspicuously absent. "Oh, I packed those away," Linda said dismissively, arranging store-bought place settings. "They're so dated. We're going for a modern look this year." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that my son loved this woman. But throughout the morning, I noticed more missing pieces. The sterling silver candlesticks from my grandmother, the hand-carved serving bowls my late husband had brought from Italy. Each time I asked, Linda had an excuse. By afternoon, our modest family gathering had swelled to include several of Linda's friends, real estate agents, and antique dealers I had never met before. They clustered in corners, speaking in hushed tones and examining our family photos with unsettling interest. Michael seemed oblivious, watching football with his cousins while I helped Linda in the kitchen. She was oddly energetic, checking her phone constantly and arranging wine glasses with precise attention. "Everything okay?" I asked, watching her reorganize the silverware for the 3rd time. "Perfect," she chirped. "Just perfect. You know what they say, out with the old, in with the new." As everyone settled around the table, I noticed Linda had positioned herself at the head, my usual spot. Michael sat beside her, while I was relegated to the far end, surrounded by strangers. The prayer had barely finished when Linda stood, tapping her glass with a fork. Before we start, I have an exciting announcement. My son looked up, surprise crossing his face. Clearly, this wasn't planned. As you know, this house has been cluttered with old family items for years, Linda began, her voice carrying a theatrical lilt. Well, I've decided it's time for a change. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm having a flash sale. Confused murmurs rippled through the guests. My niece Emma shot me a concerned look. Everything must go. Linda continued, pulling out her phone. Let's start with the basics. Margaret's mother's pearl necklace, originally valued at $5,000. But today only $2,500. And those antique Italian serving bowls? A steal at $800 each. Linda, Michael interrupted. What are you talking about? She ignored him, scrolling through her phone. Oh, and the piece de resistance, that gorgeous Wedgwood collection, currently in mint condition and ready for immediate pickup. Starting bid $10,000. Those aren't yours to sell, I said quietly, my hands shaking under the table. Linda's smile turned sharp. Actually, Margaret, they are. You see, when Michael inherited this house, everything in it legally became our property. And since we're downsizing, these dusty old things need to go. That's not true, Michael protested. Mom's heirlooms were specifically excluded in the inheritance. Were they? Linda's eyes glittered. Maybe you should check those papers again, darling. Oh wait, they're probably with all those other important documents that mysteriously disappeared last month. The room fell silent. I reached into my purse, pulling out a small key I had acquired 3 days ago. Looking for these papers, Linda? Her smile faltered slightly. What's that? The key to storage unit 247 at Safelock Storage on Mason Street, I said, watching her face pale. The one rented under your maiden name. How did you find it? Let's just say when my jewelry started disappearing piece by piece, I hired someone to follow you. Imagine my surprise when they reported back about your weekly visits to a storage facility. Linda's fingers tightened around her phone. You had no right. To protect my family's heritage, to investigate where my mother's wedding ring disappeared to. I stood slowly. But the really interesting thing isn't what I found in that storage unit, Linda. It's what I found out about you while looking for it. Michael was staring at his wife, realization dawning on his face. The missing documents, the jewelry. Linda, what have you done? Nothing, she snapped. This is ridiculous. I'm simply trying to declutter our lives, create a fresh start. By selling stolen family heirlooms to your antique dealer friends? I gestured to her guests, who were suddenly very interested in their empty plates. Or is this about covering your gambling debts? The wine glass slipped from Linda's hand, shattering on the table. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like blood. What gambling debts? Michael demanded. I pulled out my phone, displaying a series of screenshots. The Riverside Casino seems to know you quite well, Linda. Or should I say, Lauren Mitchell. Interesting how you've been using your sister's identity for those weekly poker games. You don't understand, Linda whispered, her composed facade cracking. I had it under control. Just a few more sales, and I could fix everything. Fix what? Michael stood, his face ashen. What exactly needs fixing, Linda? I laid my phone on the table, the evidence clear on the screen. Would you like to tell him about the second mortgage you took out on the house, or should I? The room erupted in chaos as Linda lunged for my phone. But what she didn't know was that this was just the beginning. In that storage unit, buried beneath my family's stolen treasures, I had found something far more damaging, something that would shake our family to its core. And as I watched my daughter-in-law's perfectly constructed world begin to crumble, I knew this Thanksgiving would be remembered not for the turkey or the trimmings, but for the secrets that were about to be served. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Linda's ragged breathing. Our guests sat frozen, forks suspended mid-air, watching the drama unfold like a Thanksgiving special gone horribly wrong. The second mortgage, Michael repeated, his voice hollow. When? 3 months ago. I answered, pulling out more documents from my bag. But that's not the worst part, is it, Linda? She gripped the table's edge, knuckles white. Don't. The storage unit wasn't just full of our family heirlooms, I continued. There were other items too. jewelry, artwork, antiques, things that didn't belong to us. Things reported missing from other homes in the neighborhood. Several of Linda's antique dealer friends suddenly stood, making hasty excuses as they headed for the door. They knew exactly what I was talking about. It started small, Linda said, her voice barely a whisper. A piece here, a piece there. Rich people who wouldn't miss them. I needed to cover the losses. So you became a fence, I finished, using these so-called dealers to sell stolen goods. Our family heirlooms were just the beginning. Michael sank back into his chair, running his hands through his hair. The country club memberships, the new car, the renovations, all from stolen property. I did it for us. Linda's voice rose hysterically. To maintain our lifestyle, to keep up appearances. Do you know how hard it is to be perfect all the time? I pulled out one final piece of paper, a bank statement. Is that why you emptied Michael's inheritance account last week? All $180,000 of it. The color drained from my son's face. What? I was going to win it back, Linda pleaded. I had a system. The poker game tonight. I just needed one good hand. Our remaining guests began quietly excusing themselves, leaving their untouched turkey growing cold. Only my niece Emma stayed, her hand gripping her phone under the table. I caught her eye and nodded slightly. She was recording everything just as we planned. But here's what I really want to know, Linda, I said, reaching into my bag one last time. Why do you have a passport under the name Claire Bennett, with flights booked to the Cayman Islands for tomorrow morning? Michael's head snapped up. Tomorrow? But we're supposed to be meeting with the real estate agent about buying the lake house. There is no lake house meeting, I said gently. Linda was planning to disappear with everything she could sell, leaving you to deal with the debt and the legal consequences. That's not true. Linda stood so abruptly her chair toppled backward. I was protecting us. Those offshore accounts were for our future. Our future? Michael laughed bitterly. You stole my inheritance, my family's treasures, and other people's property. You were planning to abandon me on Thanksgiving. What future? Linda's face transformed, her desperation morphing into something harder. Fine. You want the truth? I never planned to stay. This whole marriage was a long con. Your perfect, successful son, the easy mark. A respected doctor with a trust fund and family money? It was too good to pass up. The truth hung in the air like smoke, choking us all. Michael stared at his wife of 15 years as if seeing her for the first time. But I have one more card to play, Linda said, reaching for her own phone. You might have found my storage unit, Margaret, but did you find the videos? The ones showing Michael accepting expensive gifts from pharmaceutical representatives? The ones that could end his medical career? My son's face went pale. Those gifts were declared. Not all of them. Linda smiled coldly. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to let me walk out of here with whatever I can carry, or these videos go to the medical board. The room fell silent except for the sound of Emma's quiet typing on her phone. Linda hadn't noticed her young niece-in-law, hadn't realized that every word of her confession was being preserved. Actually, I said calmly, those videos were deleted from your cloud storage this morning. Amazing what a good private investigator can do with a password recovered from your storage unit notebook. Linda's phone clattered onto the table. You're bluffing. Am I? The same way you were bluffing about having evidence against Michael. The same way you've been bluffing your way through this marriage for 15 years. The sound of sirens in the distance made Linda's head whip toward the window. You didn't. I did. Emma spoke up, finally lowering her phone. The police have been listening to this entire conversation. They're especially interested in the stolen property ring you've been running. Linda made a dash for the door, but Michael was faster. He blocked her path, his doctor's hands gentle but firm as he grabbed her shoulders. Was any of it real? He asked, his voice breaking. Any part of our life together? For a moment, something like regret flickered across Linda's face. Then the mask slipped back into place. The only real thing was the money. It's always about the money. The police arrived moments later, led by Detective Sarah Chen, an old student of mine who had been instrumental in setting up this sting. As they led Linda away in handcuffs, she turned back one last time. The storage unit key, she said. How did you really find it? I smiled savely. You should have checked the nanny cam and the antique clock before you stole it. The one that caught you hiding the key in your jewelry box. As the police car pulled away, Michael stood in the doorway, watching 15 years of his life unravel. Emma worked with the officers, sending them her recording and statement. I began collecting the scattered remnants of our interrupted Thanksgiving dinner. "Mom," Michael said finally, turning to me. "I'm so sorry. About the heirlooms, about not seeing who she really was." I pulled my son into a hug, feeling him shake with suppressed sobs. "We'll recover what we can. But the most important things, our real family, our love for each other, those can't be stolen or sold." Later that night, as we sat among the ruins of our Thanksgiving feast, Michael asked the question I had been dreading. "How long did you know about who she really was?" I poured us both another glass of wine. I had suspicions for months, but it wasn't until I found the storage unit that I could prove anything. I needed her to reveal herself, to show you who she really was, by letting her try to sell your heirlooms at Thanksgiving dinner. "Sometimes," I said gently, "you have to lose something precious to save something priceless." As we cleaned up the aftermath of our disastrous dinner, I thought about the empty china cabinet, the missing silver, the scattered pieces of our family history. We would recover what we could, but some things were gone forever. But looking at my son, hurt but unbowed, betrayed but not broken, I knew we'd saved what mattered most. Our family might be smaller now, but it was real, and that was worth more than all the heirlooms in the world. 6 months later, I stood in my son's kitchen, carefully unwrapping pieces of my mother's Wedgwood collection. The police had finally released the recovered items from evidence, and Detective Chen had personally delivered them that morning. "Amazing how many pieces they found," Michael said, gently placing a teacup in the restored china cabinet. The storage unit was like a twisted museum. Not everything had been recovered. Some pieces had already been sold, scattered across the country through Linda's network of crook dealers. But we had gotten back more than we expected, including my mother's wedding ring, which now sat safely in a bank vault. "The sentencing is tomorrow," I reminded him softly. Michael nodded, his hand stilling on a porcelain plate. 15 years, one for each year she pretended to love me. The investigation had revealed more than just stolen heirlooms. Linda, or whatever her real name was, had pulled similar cons in 3 other states, always targeting wealthy professionals with family money. My son wasn't her first victim, but the detective assured us he would be her last. "Did you see this?" Michael pulled out a newspaper clipping from his pocket. "They found her real identity. Sarah Jenkins from Ohio. Ran away at 16, started running small scams. We were just her biggest score yet." I watched my son carefully, seeing the mix of pain and relief in his eyes. The past 6 months had been a journey of healing, of rebuilding not just our collection of family treasures, but our trust in ourselves and each other. "You know what's ironic?" he said, picking up another teacup. "All those years she spent stealing these heirlooms, trying to turn our family history into quick cash. She never understood that their real value wasn't in money." I smiled, touching a familiar chip in one of the serving bowls. "A battle scar from a Christmas dinner 20 years ago. Every piece tells a story." "That's what she couldn't steal," Michael agreed. "The memories, the stories, the real meaning of family." The doorbell rang and Emma walked in carrying a covered dish. After the dramatic Thanksgiving revelation, my niece had become a regular visitor, helping Michael navigate his newfound single life and joining us for weekly family dinners. "I brought Mom's lasagna," she announced, setting it down. "And look what I found at an estate sale." She pulled out a familiar-looking silver candlestick, not one of our stolen pieces, but similar to my grandmother's set. "For the new collection," she said proudly, "new memories, new stories." As we sat down to dinner, using a mix of recovered heirlooms and new pieces, I looked at our small but genuine family gathering. No more pretense, no more hidden agendas, no flash sales of family treasures. "I got a call from the therapy group today," Michael said between bites. "They want me to share our story, help other people who've been through similar situations." "Are you ready for that?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "I think so. Linda took a lot from us, but she gave me one thing, the ability to spot what's real and what's not. Maybe I can help others do the same." Emma raised her glass, one of the recovered crystal pieces. "To real family," she toasted, "the kind you can't put a price tag on." As we clinked glasses, I looked around at our mismatched collection of old and new, at the empty spaces still waiting to be filled, at the faces of my real family gathered around the table. Some treasures had been lost, yes, But what we found was worth far more: truth, strength, and the unshakable bond of genuine love. Linda's flash sale had failed, but it had revealed something priceless. The true value of family can't be measured in antiques or heirlooms, but in the stories we share and the love we choose to give freely, without price tags or conditions. The crystal chandelier caught the morning light as I stood in the grand foyer of the Morrison family mansion. 3 years ago, I had been on my knees beneath it, polishing the Italian marble floor until my mother-in-law could see her reflection. Today, I was here to reflect on something entirely different. Sweet karma. Mrs. Lynn. The foreclosure agent checked his tablet. Everything's in order for the inspection. Perfect. I smoothed my Channel suit, the same brand Victoria Morrison once told me I'd never be worthy of wearing. Let's start with the main floor. Isabella. Victoria's shrill voice echoed through the halls. How dare you enter my home without permission? I turned to face my mother-in-law, noting how her designer outfit couldn't quite hide the desperation in her eyes. 3 months of missed mortgage payments had taken their toll on her carefully maintained facade. Actually, it's my home now, I corrected gently, or rather Lynn Industries property as of 9 this morning. Her face, stretched tight from too many lifts, attempted to form a sneer. Impossible. This mansion has been in the Morrison family for 4 generations, and it would have stayed that way if you'd read the fine print on your refinancing agreement. I ran my finger along the marble banister, spotless, just as I'd once been forced to keep it. It's amazing how many people don't notice when their loans are bought by shell companies. Victoria's hand flew to her throat, clutching her pearls, the same ones she'd made me polish weekly during my so-called wife training. Where's Andrew? My son will never allow this. Ah yes, my dear husband Andrew. The spineless hare who had stood by while his mother turned his wife into their personal maid. Andrew signed off on the foreclosure last week, I informed her, right after he discovered who really owns the company he works for. The memory of his face when he realized his junior partner position was actually under my authority still brought me joy. Victoria sank onto the grand staircase, the same one she had made me vacuum step by step during my lessons in humility. This is absurd. You were nothing when Andrew married you. Just a scholarship student with delusions of grandeur. A scholarship student with an MBA and a trust fund I never told you about. I smiled. One that I used to start buying up real estate while you were teaching me the proper way to dust your precious antiques. The foreclosure agent cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mrs. Morrison needs to vacate the premises by Friday, I told him, though she's welcome to take her time cleaning it first. I hear housework builds character. Victoria's face flushed an unflattering shade of red. You planned this. All those years pretending to be the obedient daughter-in-law. Oh no, Victoria, you planned this. Every time you made me scrub a floor. Every time you told your society friends I was the help. Every time you reminded me that a Chinese-American girl from a modest background should be grateful to marry into old money. I walked to the living room, where I had once spent hours arranging flowers to her exacting standards. You taught me so much about running a household, so I decided to run several hundred of them. Lynn Industries now owns more luxury properties than any other company in the state. Lynn Industries, Victoria's voice cracked. The company that's been buying up all the historic estates. The same one that now owns your country club, your favorite restaurants, and yes, your family's mortgage. I paused by the antique vase she had accused me of chipping last Christmas. It's amazing what one can accomplish while everyone underestimates them. A commotion at the door announced Andrew's arrival. My husband burst in, his usually perfect hair disheveled. Isabella, we need to talk. About what? I examined my manicure, done at the spa I purchased last month. The same one his mother once banned me from entering. About how I'm not the simple girl your mother needed to train. Or about how your new office will be in the basement level of Lynn Industries headquarters. You can't do this to my family, he protested. Actually, I can. It's amazing what proper paperwork can accomplish. Your mother taught me all about the importance of keeping documents in order, remember. All those hours organizing her files. Victoria stood shakily. We can fight this. The Morrison name still means something in this town. The Morrison name means exactly what you taught me it means. Nothing without the money to back it. I nodded to the agent. Please continue the inspection. I want a full inventory of everything except personal items. Though I glanced at Victoria's prized silverware collection, I might keep the silver. I did spend enough time polishing it. Your father-in-law won't stand for this, Victoria threatened. Charles signed over his voting shares last week, I informed her. Right after I showed him proof of how you've been embezzling from the family foundation. Another lesson you taught me, always keep detailed records. Andrew's face went pale. Mother, what is she talking about? Oh, you didn't know. I pulled out my phone, showing him the documentation. Your mother has been funding her charity work with donations meant for children's hospitals. The board of directors is very interested in discussing it. Victoria swayed on her feet. You're lying? No, I'm negotiating the mansion for your silence. Though I suppose the press would love to hear how the great Victoria Morrison turned her daughter-in-law into Cinderella while stealing from sick children. You vindictive little. Careful. I cut her off. Remember what you taught me about a lady's composure. Now you have until Friday to pack. Though I suggest you start with the essentials. The Four Seasons has strict luggage limitations. The Four Seasons? Andrew frowned. Where you'll be staying until you find a new place. Consider it my final act as your dutiful daughter-in-law. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Victoria, do remember to dust before you leave. You always said a clean house reflects a pure soul. As I walked out, I heard Victoria burst into tears. 3 years ago, she had made me cry in that same spot for using the wrong polish on her floors. Karma, like revenge, sometimes needs a little help finding its way home. And I had just helped it find its way into a 20-room mansion. The news of Victoria Morrison's sudden relocation spread through high society like wildfire. I watched from my office at Lynn Industries as the social media posts rolled in, first confusion, then speculation, and finally the delicious realization that the woman who had judged everyone's housekeeping was now essentially homeless. Mrs. Lynn, my assistant Sarah, appeared at the door. The movers are at the mansion. Mrs. Morrison is refusing to pack. Of course she was. I checked my car year watch. Another piece Victoria had once told me I'd never be able to afford. Tell them to start with the East Wing. And Sarah, send in the cleaning crew. The same ones she used to hire. No, I smiled. The ones she used to pretend I was part of. When I arrived at the mansion, Victoria was standing in the garden, clutching her prized rose bushes. You can't take my flowers. I've grown these for 20 years. Actually, I consulted the property deed. The landscaping is included in the estate. But don't worry, I've hired an excellent gardener. The same one you fired for bringing me water that time I fainted while weeding in the summer heat. Andrew appeared from inside, looking disheveled. Isabella, please. We can work something out. Like how you worked out letting your mother treat me like a servant. I walked past him into the house. Or how you worked out telling the country club I wasn't allowed to use the main entrance. The movers were efficiently boxing up Victoria's precious antiques. She had made me dust each one daily, reciting their history and value, an education that had come in handy when I was appraising the estate's worth. Those are family heirlooms. Victoria shrieked as a crystal vase was carefully wrapped. Were family heirlooms, I corrected. Now they're collateral against your defaulted mortgage. Though I might donate some to the museum. They have a lovely exhibit on the exploitation of domestic workers. Andrew grabbed my arm. This isn't you, Isabella. You're not vindictive. I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. You're right, I'm not vindictive. I'm a businesswoman. Your mother taught me all about the importance of maintaining standards. I'm simply maintaining mine. By destroying our family? No, by showing it exactly what it feels like to be powerless. I turned to the head mover. Please ensure Mrs. Morrison's personal items are packed with care. We wouldn't want anything to chip, like that Ming vase she accused me of breaking. Victoria's face reddened. That vase was priceless. It was a reproduction from Home Goods, just like your supposed old money was mostly smoke and mirrors. I showed her my tablet. Your father's company was nearly bankrupt when you married Charles. Another interesting detail I found while organizing your precious files. The color drained from her face. How dare you? No, how dare you? My voice finally cracked with emotion. How dare you make me scrub floors while pretending to be something you're not? How dare you call me a gold digger when you were one yourself? How dare you try to break my spirit just because you were afraid I'd discover your lies? Andrew stepped between us. Isabella, if this is about money. It's about respect. I cut him off. Something your mother never understood. But she will now. Victoria suddenly straightened, a calculating look crossing her face. What do you want? To humiliate us? Fine, you've done that. Name your price. I laughed. My price? You still think you can buy your way out of this? I walked to the grand piano where I had once been forced to perform for her friends like a trained pet. 3 years ago, I tried to tell you about my business degree, about my plans to expand my family's investment portfolio. You said a proper wife doesn't concern herself with business. I was trying to help you fit in. No, you were trying to keep me down. Because a servant can't question why her mistress's charity accounts don't add up, can they? Andrew's head snapped up. What about the charity accounts? Show him, I told Sarah, who handed over a thick file. Everything's there. Every missing donation, every misappropriated fund. Your mother has been stealing from children's hospitals for years. Victoria lunged for the file, but Andrew held it away, his face growing darker as he read. Mother? This is fraud. It's a misunderstanding. Like how you misunderstood my capabilities, I perched on the piano bench, or how you misunderstood that the quiet girl you forced to serve tea was actually building an empire. The movers continued their efficient work as Victoria's carefully constructed world crumbled around her. Every crystal glass, every silver spoon, every piece of furniture she had once made me clean was being boxed up. The Four Seasons reservation is confirmed, Sarah announced, though they're requesting a valid credit card at check-in. Victoria's hand flew to her purse, where her cards, now all declined, sat uselessly. Don't worry, I said sweetly. I'll cover it. Consider it severance pay for all my training. Isabella, Andrew tried one last time. We can still be a family. No, we can't. But we can be what we always were, employer and employee. Your office in the basement starts Monday. Don't be late. Your mother taught me that punctuality is everything. As if on cue, the grandfather clock she had made me wind every Sunday chimed 4 times. Time to go, I announced. The new owners need to start renovations. New owners? Victoria's voice quavered. You're not keeping it? Oh no, I smiled. I'm donating it to the state. They're turning it into a museum of labor history, focusing on domestic worker exploitation. Your cleaning supplies will be part of the permanent exhibit. As Victoria finally broke down completely, I walked to the door, pausing only briefly. Andrew, don't forget to turn out the lights when you leave. Your mother always insisted on conserving electricity. Well, for the help anyway. The sound of Victoria's sobs followed me down the driveway. 3 years ago, I had cried those same tears while scrubbing her floors. But today, the only thing being cleaned was her karma. And I had made sure it sparkled. 1 month later, I stood in front of the newly renovated Morrison Mansion, now the State Museum of Labor History. The irony of watching socialites line up to see exhibits about domestic worker exploitation in the very house where I had been exploited wasn't lost on me. Mrs. Lynn. A reporter from the local newspaper approached. Would you comment on the anonymous donation that made this museum possible? I smiled, adjusting my designer suit. Sometimes the best teachers are those who never meant to educate us at all. The museum's opening gala was in full swing, and I had made sure to invite everyone who had witnessed my humiliation over the years. They now circled nervously, trying to reconcile the help with the CEO who owned half their mortgages. Victoria and Andrew hadn't been invited, of course. Last I heard, they were living in a modest condo paid for by Andrew's new salary in my company's basement office. Victoria had even been spotted taking the bus, her luxury cars repossessed after the charity fraud investigation began. Isabella? A familiar voice made me turn. It was Mrs. Bradford, one of Victoria's closest friends who had delighted in ordering me around at their tea parties. I never knew. That was the point, I replied coolly. Would you like to see the tea service exhibit? It features the same cups you used to make me wash while you discuss how I wasn't refined enough for your circle. She paled, hurrying away as Sarah approached with a tablet. The foundation board meeting is starting. They're ready to elect a new chairperson after Mrs. Morrison's departure. Perfect timing. I checked my reflection in the marble floors, spotless, though not by my hands this time. How are the donation numbers looking? Triple what Victoria ever raised. Turns out donors prefer when their money actually helps children instead of funding shopping sprees. I entered the boardroom, the same room where Victoria had once made me serve coffee while she held court. The board members, many of whom had ignored me during my training days, now stood respectfully. Ladies, gentlemen, I took my seat at the head of the table. Let's discuss the future of the Morrison Children's Foundation, though I suppose we should rename it. Any suggestions? The Lynn Foundation has a nice ring to it, someone offered. Actually, I smiled. I was thinking of naming it after all the domestic workers who have been invisible for too long. Victoria taught me the importance of remembering one's roots after all. As the meeting proceeded, I gazed out at the garden where I had once planted Victoria's precious roses. They were still there, but now surrounded by a memorial to domestic workers' rights. My phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. Please, can we talk about Mother's situation? I replied simply, ask your HR representative to schedule a meeting. During business hours only. Another buzz. She's sorry. We both are. Sorry doesn't clean floors, I tagged back. But learning to live within your means builds character. Your mother taught me that. The board meeting concluded with unanimous approval for the foundation's new direction. As members filed out, I lingered in what had once been Victoria's sanctuary. Sarah entered with a final update. The Four Seasons called. Mrs. Morrison's stay is up tomorrow. Book her another week, I decided. Consider it a final lesson in hospitality. She always said a good hostess thinks of everything. As I left the mansion-turned museum, I passed the wall where Victoria had once displayed her family photos. Now it held pictures of domestic workers throughout history, including one of me scrubbing the very floors visitors now stood on. Beneath it was a plaque that read, Success is the best revenge, but karma needs a helping hand sometimes. Victoria had wanted to teach me my place in society. She had succeeded beyond her wildest nightmares. Because sometimes the best way to learn your place is to climb right to the top, even if you have to scrub a few floors along the way. And as for Victoria's marriage training, well, it taught me something valuable after all. The best investment isn't in marriage, it's in yourself. That's one lesson I would never forget to pass on.